Why don't you purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka?
Welcome to EnterVR, the podcast where we talk about all things virtual reality. I am your host, Chris Miranda, and I am doing a 3-part series on this historic event that in the virtual reality community, the Facebook buyout of Oculus. So far, I've interviewed Wormslayer, the one of the moderators of our Oculus, Carl Krant, the founder of Silicon Valley Virtual Reality Meetup. And now I'm interviewing a VR developer, Nick Pittom, the creator of the Boiler Room from Spirited Away. Thanks for coming on the show, Nick, and giving me your thoughts on this whole.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, and more than happy to give my opinion.
Perfect. So I want to be as I was mentioning to you earlier, not to beat on a dead horse sort of subject, but I think that I want to feel like I'm capturing these conversations from as many angles and as many valid viewpoints as possible, and so I value definitely the viewpoints and perspectives of developers such as yourself. So let's get this going. What do you think personally about what's just happened in terms of this Facebook Oculus buyout?
I'm generally pretty positive. I mean, I kind of, when it all started, when it all happened, there was that immediate sort of like, wow, whoa, what's this? This seems big and kind of scary, and what's going on? Mm-hmm. It kind of throws, maybe if you've got plans to develop something, or you've even just got sort of just thoughts of what you're going to be doing with your cool new headset. It throws that into kind of disarray, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? But quickly, I kind of just thought, all right, well, let's forget all that. What's actually going to change? What's the difference? And I kind of thought, well, very little is going to change in the short term in terms of things I'm doing or things I might enjoy on the Rift, except that Oculus now have a lot of money and a lot of resources and a lot of scope for doing what they need to do. There were lots of unknowns before this was announced of how they were going to actually achieve everything, how they were actually going to manage to get everything done. And I think they've now obviously don't have to worry about that kind of thing, which is great. But yeah, now it's been a couple of days or a day and a half, or whatever it's been. I'm still of that opinion. I still think it's a good thing for VR. I still think it gives them a lot of opportunities, and it also kind of, I guess, in my mind, gives me a reassurance that what I'm doing has a future. It's got something to go to. It's not all just going to kind of fall off the wagon if Oculus fails for whatever reason.
Very valid point. So you mentioned generally this is a positive. What's so in the other spectrum, what isn't positive about this in your mind?
I mean, the backlash immediately was pretty negative, and I'm sure that's what a lot of the press has been about in non-VR kind of or non-gaming focused press has been about the backlash. Mm-hmm. And that obviously, I guess from an image point of view, perhaps puts a negative spin. I'm not sure if that matters to anyone really, because further down the line, that's all going to settle and it'll come down to what they're doing. I guess in terms of Facebook themselves, the negatives, I guess, they're not going to, I don't see any immediate negatives. I don't see them asserting any control over Oculus, over their plans, up until them developing the actual final consumer version. Mm-hmm. Even shortly after that, I think it's going to come in the future when they develop their platform, their Steam equivalent, or their equivalent for what they're going to do with VR, and what level of control and what level of Facebookiness they put over that. Yeah. It's such an unknown though. It's kind of difficult to kind of brainstorm what those potential pitfalls could be. It's good though that people are. It's good though that people are thinking of all the potential bad sides, because if people are getting up in arms about it now, that hopefully signals to Oculus and Facebook that they need to ensure that doesn't happen.
Right, and so you already sort of talked about this, but in the short term, this is good for virtual reality. In the long term, I mean, it's pretty much anyone's guess. But where could this lead to? Do you think?
I think it's gonna bring about that vision that Oculus have had that much quicker and that much more assuredly. In the long term, I mean, past CV1 into the future, I mean, it's a big bet on VR. It's a big, Facebook putting down a big chip on it and saying, we think this is a big future. And I think it signals to other people, other potential big players in the market that whatever plans they did have, they want to accelerate them as well. They want to ensure that they're not left behind. Because Oculus were already, a small startup, we're already doing better than Sony. I mean, bear in mind, Morpheus is a great product, but it's no better than what Oculus were doing. A little small startup.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna send a little shot in the arm of those companies to hopefully up their efforts, which is great because that will mean more competition. And that will mean more places for content creators to go out to and for consumers to, be able to get the best they can out of it.
I don't mean to sound too speculative, and because I'm hopeful for this technology. I'm all in, just like yourself. But to us, one thing that I don't want to assume immediately is that there will be. Because I all of a sudden I don't know. There's so many unknowns. Just how you mentioned, there's because now it's not just Palmer and Brendan and Nate and Carmack who have the last word. It's also the board from Zuckerberg's board, which I don't know these people. I don't know what their priorities are. And so for that matter, I can understand and empathize with people who are. Up in arms, not necessarily the viciousness and the personal attacks. I'm not for that, but I definitely understand, this uncertainty because all of a sudden I don't know who is really gonna run the show at the end of the day, especially in the long term. And I bring that up because knowing this American corporate culture, and I'm worried about software patents, and I'm worried about stemming or imposing on innovation by using courtroom lawyers to start patent wars with Sony and some other small startups. You know what I'm saying? Like that. Now that Facebook owns the patents,
in terms of how Facebook ran the business, I think it's worth looking to their recent, WhatsApp and Instagram is them as well, isn't it? And that they've left it pretty much to their own devices. They exist as they had done before. Whereas if you look at other companies, I'm not saying, it's just a rough comparison, but if it had been a different company, like Microsoft, or there's no reason to suspect they would have been any better, and probably, worse for what Oculus want to do. In terms of what the board are going to do, in terms of what was the other concern that you were saying? Patents.
I'm concerned that competition will be stymied. I think I just made up a word by patent trolls that Facebook will be because everybody's saying 5-10 years down the line there's going to be others that we will be able to choose from. But what if these lawyers stop that from happening? What if there's only?
Well, I think it's worth noting that the stuff in these headsets. Is not like the reason Palmer was able to do it so successfully, so quickly with such small. These are off-the-shelf components. And Oculus have just developed their own versions. But there's absolutely no reason to suggest other companies cannot make components just as good within the existing patents that exist and refining the devices that already exist. I don't think it's the sort of hardware that can be patented out of existence. Even mobile phones, there's been patent wars around them and LTE chips and all these sort of things. But it doesn't mean that Samsung or one of these other companies throwing their weight around doesn't mean that you don't get a great phone or device from another company. And there's lots of other shady practices in phone companies that stimulate competition.
Yeah.
But I don't think with a headset, with HMD, with virtual reality headsets, that there is enough scope there for companies to crack down or to have patent wars that will stop other devices coming out, that will stop that sort of competition. It's a worry. I mean, I totally understand the concern, but I think it's one of those. It's a big corporation, Facebook. They've got lots of lawyers. They want they're in it for the money, essentially. So, sure, there's probably going to be something. There's always going to be shady like movements around those sort of entities because just of the nature of what they are. But it was always going to be some company. It was always going to be some massive corporation was going to buy it out. If it wasn't Facebook, it would have been someone else. And they're all big companies with money in mind.
Yeah.
I mean, Palmer, when he was saying at the start, when someone asked him, he didn't shy away from it. When they said, "Look, are you going to allow yourself to be bought out?" He said, "Yeah, we might do that.
Yeah, at the right price.
If it's right for us, if it's for the right price, if it allows Oculus to do what Oculus needs to do, then we will do that." And also, I think, it's been said a few times, the angel investors who come along, the guys who gave them $70 million, they were not doing it because they believed in VR. Mm-hmm. They were not doing it for the love of what they saw an opportunity, but that opportunity was always in mind that someone would come along and throw billions at the company. Yeah. And in a way, they were more in, many of them would have been more invested in holding out for more money. And so the idea that it's 2 billion rather than 50 billion or whatever it could have been further down the line, you have to think Palmer and co are doing that for a reason. And the reason they're doing that now is to have the money to achieve what they want. But also they've said, we want that control. We want control over our company. And if they'd been more willing to give up that control and say, look, well, here's our company, you do what you want with it, maybe they would have got more money.
Yeah, there's definitely that possibility, but there's also, again, I haven't seen the agreement. I haven't read the agreement, so I really don't know what happened behind those closed doors and what will happen in the future. And I'm honestly just taking a wait and see approach. I'm hopeful. Yeah. I'm all for Oculus. I'm all for Palmer, and this is a nice guy who's 21. He's a 21-year-old kid, I think, swimming in a shark-infested water, and I hope the best for him in company. I'm just taking a wait and see approach. I think it's a good idea to take a wait and see about it. Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. And I totally respect and understand the people that have misgivings and the people who are nervous and the people who view it in a negative way even. And obviously I think it would be stupid to just be like, oh, this is 100% awesome and there are no potential downsides, because there are. I think the only thing we can do, though, if we're not looking at the contracts that have been signed, which I doubt we ever will, the only thing we can do is take what Palmer is saying and take what Facebook is saying, and sort of assume that they're not lying, and sort of assume that that's roughly what's going to happen. Because otherwise, just we might as well just give up on the whole thing, because if Sony is the other player, they're a great big corporation. True. They're going to have their own walled garden. You're not going to get porn on the PlayStation 4 if that's what you want. Yeah. You probably are going to get it on the Oculus. If Sony was, I don't see any way they can stop it, and so it's going to be a far more open platform. And it's an exciting area with lots of competition. Someone is going to create the product that you want, and if it's not Oculus, it'll be someone else. So the good thing is, of course, we're not beholden to Oculus. We're not. They're driving the way forward. That's a good thing you bring up, actually, this loyalty thing, because now I feel like this is where I think Oculus Oculus, Oculus lost some brand loyalty. I think this is this backlash. What has shown is that, before you could see clearly that this community was 100% behind this company, and you would see that so people would dismiss Sony, people would dismiss other VR smaller players trying to get in the game. Now, if it feels like, and there's this sense in some people in the community that this feels like a betrayal, and in this there's no loyalty from Oculus for a certain set of their fans. And I guess it's completely understandable. It's just the reality of the fact that you have the ideals of the investors and the corporate types, and you have the ideals of the consumers and the evangelists and the enthusiasts. And now we have this point at which they clash. And so now what you're seeing, and just what you mentioned, like, I think what this is going to show is that there will be people who will lose their loyalty for Oculus. Sure, they'll buy the Rift, but immediately if there's another player in the game that is compelling, and they'll jump on board to the other guy.
And I think that's exactly what they should do. And I think maybe that comes down to people having a misplaced loyalty, or a misplaced sort of thing. I guess. For want of a better word, loyalty, or my kind of heart, if you want, is in the VR that we all want to see, and my ambition is to make games and experiences for that VR. At the moment, Oculus best embodies that, and so my loyalty to Oculus, as far as it goes, as far as buying their product or developing for their headset, is based purely on what they're able to provide me on the platform they are providing. It's not based on an image of what the company is, or I like the people who are running it. I think they've got a great vision behind it, but I'm not kind of attached to them on a personal level, or to the company on a personal level.
Yeah.
If someone comes along who is better, who has better development options, or who has a better platform, or that kind of thing, I will switch.
Yeah.
Obviously, you take other things into mind, like how many headsets are out there, if it's a big enough platform to go to. But equally, there's no reason why I can't develop for Oculus, or for another headset that comes along.
Yeah.
There's going to be plenty of other, Android headsets are going to come up, where it's based on mobile technology. Give it a few years, that technology is going to be good enough to run VR as good as any computer can now.
I agree.
The loyalty should not be towards a company, and it never really should have. Well, I mean, it's always nice to follow a company and root for them, but we shouldn't, just because one company is doing something you don't like. I don't know. Maybe people were too attached to the company on an emotional level, in a way that was probably never a good idea to begin with. Yeah.
You're right. I think you're 100% right in terms of that attachment, that emotional attachment to this company. It was. And I can sort of understand it. This is a compelling story of this kid that comes out of nowhere with a headset, with and puts together this ragtag group of people who are talking about doing huge things, through crowdfunding. It's a compelling story, and you almost fall in love with it, but just, and I think what you said,
the story mattered. The story and Palmer himself matter. He's when all this happened, that was the reason I could look at Oculus and say, well, no, this isn't someone selling out. This is people looking to do the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. I've got a degree of faith that they're doing it in good faith, and that's good to have as well. But as far as the company goes, as far as Oculus goes, I won't be upset if I have to switch to a different platform. It won't upset me. I'll just pick whatever the best option is.
Yeah. One thing that this has definitely done for me is it's raised my expectations for consumer version 1. I demand a 4K panel. I don't want anything else. If anybody from Oculus, anybody close to Oculus is listening to this, you've just raised the bar really high, buddy. You need to. I will not conform to anything below 4K. You have the money. I don't need your excuses now. This is.
I think 4K is great. I think they'd probably want that, but I suspect the supply is not out there yet for them to bring out a CV1 as soon as they want, as great as it will be. But I'm sure they will have a 4K as soon as it's possible.
I hope so. And I think in terms of that specific aspect of putting out a 4K headset, would they shoot themselves in the foot because people wouldn't be able to run it on their machines, or
Yeah, I mean that's the primary thing. It would be completely pointless. I mean, there's the good side of it is you get a certain degree of quality improvement anyway.
Yeah.
Because you're doing some sort of up-resing, down-resing type thing. But no one can render 4K games in VR at 90 frames a second.
Oh
no
my
matter,
God.
Yeah, on a game
Yeah.
that's not a bunch of basic cubes floating around. I just don't see it. It's not going to happen for the next few years. Or at least, I won't say that, because NVIDIA will bring out some ridiculous card that can. But at 1440p, that seems like a very realistic option for the CV1. And also in terms of, what people can possibly render, that sounds like a good compromise also, because they're not going to look to make lots of money off the hardware, but they do want to be able to not make a loss on it.
True.
And that's probably the sweet spot for that.
Yeah, I just want them to wet my pants, man. With that, I just want them to blow my mind away. But no, I totally understand. I completely understand. It makes business sense for sure. So what is as a developer? Are you at all worried? I mean, this is again speculation land, but are you at all concerned, or does it cross your mind that you might have to put ads in your experiences? Is that something that you've given thought to?
That's just business model stuff. I mean, if you've got a free to play game on mobile or on any sort of platform, you've got to have either adverts or you're going to be selling some kind of microtransactions. No matter what the platform is.
Yeah.
It's just who's you're going to have Facebook as the advertising platform instead of Google, instead of whoever. I mean, Unity are putting together their own advertising platform.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the way you're selling your game, that it's free to play but with adverts, then sure. But I don't know if that's. I think the companies selling adverts are not going to look at that particularly fondly just yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's having adverts pop up in 3D has never been. But I tell you what, Infinite Realities, who they're looking to put advertising, as far as I know, without wanting to speak for them, they're looking to put advertising in their 3D scans of naked people.
Nice.
As a free version, so you get it for free or you get it for cheap or something, and it's ad supported.
Yeah, interesting.
So it already exists, but it exists on a game by game basis or an experience by experience. I don't think it's going to be forced by Facebook.
In terms of speaking of infinite realities and adult content, are you? Is the thought of censorship or a filtering system at all sort of something that's crossed your mind as well? I wonder.
I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to happen because they're going to have their own platform for bringing content out. It's going to be like Steam or something. It's going to be like the iTunes App Store or something.
Yeah.
They're going to have filtering. They're going to have some kind of. You can't put hardcore porn on iTunes.
Although we should.
There are restrictions on Steam of what you can release. But equally, you don't have to use Steam. And I don't think they're going to force you to use Facebook's App Store either. I think you're going to be able to. It's just like a computer. You don't have to use a particular. Microsoft don't force you to use their store to buy software. I think it's going to be the same thing.
We'll see. Again, I'm hopeful for the short-term future. I'm confident in the short-term future. I have no idea what's going to happen in the long run.
No, I don't think anyone does. And it's kind of equally exciting and a little bit scary for that. But equally, I guess it might just be because I'm most of the time I'm focused on just making something.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I kind of think. Whereas before there was lots of unknowns, well now one of the knowns is that it's going to get out to a lot of places.
Yeah.
And it's going to have a lot more demand, which potentially means more people get to see what I'm making. And that's great. For me, that's a big positive.
No, I think from a developer point of view, I would see myself being positioning myself in a very good place. For the future, because you're at the cutting edge. You are creating content that will become, I think, extremely valuable and sought after. And again, you're first in line to. When I speak to like people such as yourselves, I get the sense that someone out here that I'm speaking with will be a millionaire soon. Who knows? And I hope it's you. But again, I'm telling you, man. Like, I have to sense, like, man, this is gonna be big, and
there's gonna be some big VR stuff. And of course, the only way that those people are gonna be big is if there's a great big platform like Facebook supporting it.
Yeah.
So, it's all good because VR needs momentum to continue. And whether or not, I don't know, it might not have been enough for them to be independent. I don't know if it would have been enough without this level of investment and this level of backing and this sort of platform behind them. I don't know if they could have done it.
$400 million cash up front and 1.6 billion in Facebook stock. What's your take on that number, on those numbers?
Again, I think it's just the right number. It gives it's
really
it's
they
cheap.
gave what they get Snapshot they offered Snapshot $6 billion and what the fuck is Snapshot doing? Like I'm just again
because Snapshot, these apps have already got a user base.
Yeah, they've
already got like this is the numbers they're working with. It's the numbers game. Facebook can turn around and go, well, look, we can make this amount of money off of it.
Yeah.
We got to throw a big enough money at them that they'll sell. Oculus at the moment is not there. It doesn't have the user base. To get the user base, they need the investment.
Yeah.
It's a different situation, and also equally again, they do want to keep that degree of control. I don't know. It's one of those things. Maybe it could have been bigger numbers in the future, but equally, they might not have got to that future without the money in the first place.
Yeah, there's so many unknowns, and now we're here. It's just insane how fast it all happened. Because like how did people, for example, around your circle and people that around you react to this?
I don't think I know enough people.
Mm-hmm.
who I only know a few people who are directly invested in gaming and VR. To give the most of the reaction I saw was on Twitter and the sort of people who I did ask that I did know or I did speak to about it. Their opinion was roughly in line with mine. I guess it's sort of. I think it was more amusement at the backlash. It was more kind of like. Why are people so crazy? Why are people, so short? I don't want to say short-sighted. I'm trying to think of the right word. It just kind of is a bit, short-sighted. That they're just looking at that initial big company buys out, plucky underdog, and it's not really that narrative at all. It's a completely different narrative, and I think people maybe didn't recognise that.
True.
And people are focusing on the wrong things because it's all about what makes VR the best it can be, or makes the biggest platform, or gives people the biggest options and opportunities. I think this does the best it can do right now with what we have, with who's working and where the hardware is. It seems like a good deal. I don't know if it's the best deal. Some other company might have had a better deal, but for now, Oculus. It was in their interest to do the right thing. Hopefully they have.
Yeah, and now we're here. I know it's
Now we're here.
the other, and the flip side of that short-sightedness that you mentioned is it's people where I personally I had a hard time trying to figure out where do I stand in this? What is my voice in all of this? And I'm gonna say it outright. I don't know. I don't, and I'm just, again, like what I said earlier, I'm just gonna take a wait and see approach. I still believe in Oculus, but I don't like Facebook. I don't like.
I think that's fine. I think that's a perfectly healthy and good outlook to have, because again, you don't have to have an emotional attachment to these companies. You don't have to love any of them. You don't have to feel good about it even. But of course, at the same time, it's good not to completely dismiss Oculus, because I think if anyone who is currently dismissing Oculus and calling them dead and cancelling their pre-orders, I think they might kind of see that in the future they might turn around and realise, maybe I was thinking a little, short term and not really thinking of the big picture.
There's definitely that. I agree. No, I think that to cancel your pre-order, in my opinion, my humble opinion, I think is a bit overreaction. But again, it's people are definitely emotionally invested in this, and definitely have their views and viewpoints into all of this. Again, this is good for virtual reality. What it means for my ideals of what virtual reality can become, I don't know.
I think that's going to come down to developers and users to decide as we go, because a company like Oculus, a company like Facebook, are not going to control VR in general, and those sort of experiences of what we want VR to be is going to come from developers, and it's going to come from users, making those developers successful enough to be able to provide those experiences, or supporting the developers that do give them the experiences they want.
Yeah.
I don't think Oculus and they're just providing the platform for it. The actual experiences are going to come from people who are not those companies. So we need to put our energies into worrying about that side of things, I think.
Yeah, let's follow me down the rabbit hole for a quick sec, because I've been thinking about where in all of this, between the Oculus and the developers and the enthusiasts, where does the general future consumer fall into this, and what are their what are they signing up for? What are they do they know what they're signing up for? People like my grandma, she doesn't know what the internet is. She just uses it. And so I wonder if it'd be a good idea to come up with a virtual reality consumer bill of rights or something to protect consumers from what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I don't think Facebook gives a fuck about its customers. It cares about its bottom line, and that's obvious. So how does a customer protect themselves? How do they look out for themselves?
I think the only way to protect yourself is the same way you use Steam, the same way if you own a console.
Mm-hmm.
Voicing your concerns. The way that Microsoft backpedaled and did a 180 over their digital solution before release, where people, all of that. The thing is, in the end, if it got released, it might have been great. It might have been, people might have used it and thought, actually, this is really convenient and great, and I like it. But what happened was consumers said, no, we don't like the way this sounds. We don't like it. We're not going to buy it. There was a backlash, and that worked. Consumers were able to change Xbox, Microsoft mind on it, and the console is now far more like what consumers have said they wanted. That's why the backlash in this case is not that bad. I don't view it as a completely negative thing, because it sends that signal. It says to them, look, we're not going to take any nonsense. We don't want any of your bullshit. We want it to be the VR platform we want it to be, and we're not going to really take any of this advertising stuff. And it's great, because the other thing is people can vote with their wallet.
Yeah.
You don't have to buy it. If it's not what you want, don't buy it. And, consumers haven't, Oculus have said to consumers, do not buy our kits yet.
Yeah.
It's not ready.
Yeah.
And it's going to come to the point when the CV1 is going to be released, whatever they call it at the time, and they're going to sell that to the world, and they're going to say to people, this is the reason you should buy it. And that sales pitch is what people should be buying it on. And if they do not like it, if they do not like the terms and conditions, if they do not like the marketplace or whatever else Oculus is going to provide for it, they don't have to buy it.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't buy it. And they should make that known, the reasons they are not buying it. And that's how it works. They shouldn't, I mean, it's just, there are normal consumer protections, but as far as it goes, those are the ways, sadly, capitalist society works.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, don't buy it.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah, no, I agree, definitely. I just wonder how far this will go before, I mean, I'm crazy because I think that this is going to become just like Wi-Fi. It's going to become a necessity one day. Who knows how long it'll take, but it'll be a communication necessity. Yeah.
Smartphones came along and they were just like, it took the iPhone and then suddenly they blew up, and now everyone's got one. I'm not saying that VR is going to do the same. Not everyone's got a gaming PC. Not everyone's got a console or a handheld console. Like a 3DS. They're great devices. Not everyone has one.
Yeah.
But I think now this is the push that is going to make VR the mainstream that VR can be. Whatever that becomes.
And speaking of backlash, Sony, when Microsoft announced that, going back to what you mentioned earlier, how when Microsoft announced those terms and conditions and those policies and there was this backlash from the community, Sony played right into those hands of these consumer sentiments. And you saw at E3 how people were giving Sony, after their show, they were giving Sony a standing ovations and all that good stuff. And so, wasn't it? It's funny to see on Twitter how it was a Kaz Hirai who said something about enjoy your virtual rooms with advertisement. So I feel like Sony is doing the same thing again here. Like they're positioning themselves to. This is where I'm really really looking forward to E3 because I wonder how much Sony's gonna play this to their advantage now. This backlash.
I think Sony can only play that so far. And they can only push that idea so far. They don't want to overplay it because what they need to do is prove to people that their device is worth buying.
Yeah.
It doesn't. As much as I find it amusing what the CEO guy was saying, I thought it was quite funny. I also think that's great, but give me a reason to invest or whatever in your product. At the moment, they've got a great product, and it's actually, if you compare it next to the DK2 or Crystal Cove or whatever, they're pretty damn similar. They're very, very similar. They could do a lot of great things, and of course, they've already got a bunch of PlayStation 4s out there. Yeah. Not as many as they'd like, but they've already got a user base.
And they already beat Microsoft in the console war. They're not already, but they're beating Microsoft in the console war. What if Sony releases this for the PC? Again, crazy world, far-fetched idea, but what if they decide we're going to make this open source and we're going to allow it for the PC? Would this change developers' minds, you think? Would this turn heads?
I don't think that's going to... No, because it's not... Sony can only do so much, and they're going to put their efforts into making it PlayStation focused. It might be that you can use it on a PC, but I just don't think enough devs are going to look at that and say, this is now that a few 100,000 people have them for PC. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's going to be a big enough user base to make that support be there.
Fair point. Yeah. Well, here we come. We're all just riding this roller coaster now. I mean, this has made things extremely exciting. And now I gotta blasphemy. I gotta thank Facebook for doing this because now virtual reality is in the mainstream consciousness, and it's not gonna go away. And holy shit, it's legitimized the work that you're doing and the work that a lot of people in the community are doing, so it's strapped tight. It's going to be a roller coaster.
I mean, the only people who've seen my stuff are those Oculus enthusiasts. Mm-hmm. It's not gone outside of that. So as much as I've loved making it, and I've loved the fact that all these people have enjoyed it. But that's not really, I can only do so much making stuff for free. I can only do so much making these little demos, because they're not the best they could be. I'm not making the best experiences I can at the moment.
Yeah.
Mainly because I'm still inexperienced, but also there's not currently the platform out there to be able to justify charging for anything, to be able to justify investing a lot of money in it.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that just signals that in the future it will become more of a possibility for me to invest that time and money into it.
Yeah, the future is unknown and exciting. Man,
Chris, man, I'm gonna have to run, but
no,
I
this
really,
was perfect.
Really
I enjoyed it as well. I was just gonna call it a day. So thank you, Nick Pittom. It has been a pleasure and an honor to have this conversation with you. You have been a scholar and gentleman of virtual reality, like always.
Thank you very much. I look forward to keeping track of everything on EnterVR.
Really quickly, how can people stay in touch and follow you and keep up to date with what you're up to?
At Red of Paw on Twitter. That's where I'll post any updates. But also my WordPress blog, which is Red of Paw as well. You can find it there, or on Reddit. I'm Red of Paw on there.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris.